Looking into, first of all, F1, perhaps the most important part of the project is your own staff. And this should be staff that is exclusively working with the project. You cannot, if you work with an environmental project and you have an environmental department of 3 people in your organization, you cannot enter the costs or the fees of these 3 staff members. It has to be staff members that are working exclusively with the project. Always include costs, including taxes, social fees, and other benefits. Even bonus can be applicable into this. Calculate based on the salary, the reimbursement of the specific staff category per 1 day. The life standard is to calculate 140 productive hours per month. And then basically you have the day fee, and then you need the man days to carry out the specific task. The costs are assorted according to the kind of action that you're carrying out, and they're connected to a certain action. We will look into actions more on Thursday, on how to do the different actions and how to jump in between action and cost categories. So part of this will be covered then. And then you need to also separate the different staff categories into different categories dependent on their daily salary, basically. So here is an example. You will have to enter it under staff costs, the section of staff costs. A project manager, say that this project manager costs the organization 250 euros per day. Then you indicate 250 as well as the amount of man days. And here you see different categories. There is the senior advisor also could be useful in some. He has a slightly lower day reimbursement, 200 euros per day, and then you multiply that by the amount of man days. And there is also the laboratory stuff for the PhD student that only has 150 euros per day. Then you also take this amount of man days. This one is quite straightforward, I think. The harder thing is to estimate the number of man days for the different categories. You could, for example, take the project manager. We expect the project manager during a year, if it works full time, will work with the project about 215 days. That could be at least a reference. We'll get back to some references later on. Also connected to the staff categories, life projects require travel and subsistence to a quite large part. It is important to mention that one of the valuation criteria is how, even if it's a small one, how the project deals with CO2 emissions. So many meetings could probably be carried out over Skype or telephone, so that you don't have travel costs and CO2 costs. But some meetings, of course, require real social interaction, and this is the place to specify that. You need to be quite clear on the expected trips. You can not just have a post where it says travel and subsistence, travel during 3 years, and then a number. You need to specify the number of people that are traveling for the different trips, the duration of the trip, as well as the destination. Destination can be hard to include, since we do not always know all the conferences that are upcoming in the nearest years, or where we want to have the partner meeting. That of course depends, but at least you should be able to specify if it's inside Lithuania that you're traveling, inside the EU or outside the EU. That will give you some references. And then you include relatively realistic actual travel costs. You can exaggerate a little bit on air costs. Air tickets usually cost more than you expect, I think. Also include the hotels and the per diem reimbursement. You should not include the indirect costs, such as the conference fees on the conference that you're visiting, only the very clean travel and subsistence fees. I made 2 examples. First of all, we have a municipality that are planning to visit the Conference of Council of European Municipalities and Regions to present their ongoing projects in order to increase the capacity of other municipalities in the European Union in the specific field. For this, they estimate that they require 2 people traveling for 4 days to Brussels. And the specification of this, it's enough to write Conference of Council of European Municipalities and Regions. Maybe you should here write also that the conference will be held in Brussels, but we do not know yet. But even if it's likely, because their headquarters is there, we put into travel 600 euros and subsistence 1,300, and this is calculated on that air tickets would cost about 300 euros, return Vilnius, Brussels. You would need 3 hotel nights, 2 people would be about 900 euros for those, and then the per diem for 4 days, counted on that 1 day is 50 euros, would be for 2 people about to 8,000. Well, as you can see the calculation there, and in total this turns into 1,900 euros, and that has to be split up into travel, the air tickets 600 euros, and the rest subsistence 1,300. Okay, we will hit the next category. Oh, no, we're not actually. We'll have to look into, first of all, public authorities. There is something quite tricky called the 2% rule, which creates lots of fear to public authorities, since they will have to keep this in mind. But this is actually not too complicated or not too scary. The 2% rules means that the LIFE program is encouraging public authorities, municipalities, for example, to contract staff exclusively for the LIFE project so that they can concentrate exclusively for the project. There are 2 different staff categories here, and many of you have questions on this regard. Excuse me. There are the permanent staff and the civil servants. This means people that are already, for example, when you're writing the application, working at the beneficiary, at the region or at the municipality, they want to work with the project, and therefore they can do so either 100% of their time or a little bit less. But the straight definition is that the people, the permanent staff, must have worked at the municipality prior to signing the grant agreement, the contract. So before the project started, basically. The application period is unimportant here. And if the permanent staff is to work with a LIFE project, if it's approved, they need a specific contract or a letter of assignment signed by their employer that they are allowed or they are assigned to work with the certain LIFE project, for example, 40% of their time. Many municipalities choose to instead employ new people to work with a project, for example, a project manager. These are called additional staff, and they're starting to work at the beneficiary after the start of the project. And they need to be contracted specifically to work with the LIFE project. So it will be written in their employment contract that they are supposed to work specifically with the LIFE project, for example, 70% of their time, and perhaps 30% of their time they will work with administrative tasks in the municipality. Of course, their contract will need to be renewed following the LIFE project. or it may be terminated if the municipality doesn't need them anymore. So there was one question on if permanent staff or civil servants, that is people that works already at the beneficiary, if they already have a contract with the municipality, for example, do they need to sign a new contract? Yes, that is an opportunity, but it's not necessary. It would be enough to keep the original contract, but write an additional letter of assignment to the LIFE project. I want to remind you that when you post questions, I cannot see them. I can only see the chat comments. Perhaps I should have a look. Okay, yeah, I see that there are coming lots of questions. I'll see if I can answer some of them. Now the presentation should be back to you. And the 2% rule, the basic idea is that the public body's own financial contribution to the project budget must exceed by at least 2% the salary costs, the own salary costs of the permanent or civil servant staff that are working with the project. So now you can see that this is weighting the financial contribution, the 40% to the budget that the municipality is putting in to the salary costs of permanent staff in the project. And you will be able in the application system to see an automatic check of this. It will be a little red box when you open report R4. It's quite useful. And that will also, if you trick a little bit with a number back and forth, you will also get a better understanding. To further, deepen your understanding, we'll make two examples. Those are quite simple, but should be, or it's simplified projects, but should be quite explanatory at least. We have a public organization that have been approved for LIFE financing, and Maria has worked in the organization since 2016. The project is approved in 2018. Therefore, she is considered permanent staff. She wants to be the project manager, and she will work full-time with the project, that is 215 days a year for 250 euros per day in 3 years. She will cost 161,250 euros to the project. Dalia, on the other hand, she has been hired specifically for the project after the grant agreement in September 2018. Therefore, she is additional staff, and she will manage the financial administration of the project. She will actually work full-time with the project too, because she will have some other side tasks also. 215 days, 150 euros per day, and she will work for 3 years, 96,000 euros. Not SEK. I don't understand why I wrote SEK here. It's euros, of course. And then Sweco has been subcontracted to carry out some works, or it doesn't need to be Sweco, can be any external consultant, at the cost of 150,000 euros. The total budget of this small project is 408,000 euros. The total financial contribution of this specific public organization will be 163,200 euros, which is, it should say, of course, 408,000 times 40%, which is 163,200 euros. And if you then take the additional cost of the permanent staff, 161,000 times 1.02, which is the exceeding 2%, you will see that the cost for the permanent staff is higher than the total financial contribution of the public organizations. Even if it's only 1,000 euros, this would not be possible to submit this proposal. So you would need to do changes. Then you could either apply a small change, for example, that you remove a few days from the project manager's account, This will decrease the cost of permanent staff. Or you can restructure the project and kind of follow the trail or the wishes that the European Commission has put for this. And this would be to hire Maria. She's still working as in the project, but she's only working on 50% with expertise, because she has done different European funded projects before. So her expertise is needed, but it's enough that she's working on 50%. So now the cost of permanent staff will be 80,625. And then instead we hire Gary at 70% as the project manager, and he will be hired after the grant agreement is signed in August 2018. That means that he's additional staff, 90,000 euros. Dalia will still work, but she will work a little bit less since she has since there are quite many people on the project now. Still, we plan to fill 2 full employments. So Dalia will work at 80% with the financial administration and perhaps a little bit less with other tasks. And her final cost will be 77,400 euros, not SEK. Again, Sweco or any other sub-consultant will be subcontracted to do works at 150 euros. Now the total budget of the project will be a little bit less because we use cheaper staff. Gary is cheaper than Maria. He only costs 200 euros per day instead of 250 euros that Maria costs. So the total financial contribution of this public organization will be 159,330 euros, which is more than 82,238 euros, which is Maria's salary plus 2%, or the 2 exceeding percent. So this is a construction that would work, basically. I'll see if I can see some of your questions. I actually find it quite interesting if you have a question. Okay. Okay, well, I can answer the last question at least. Staff costs: should all employees be precisely projected and included with their targeted and existing salaries? Not precisely projected. It's enough to create categories. For example, that you have 3 categories. You have a junior staff member, you have a senior staff member, and you have a project manager. And the costs for these are 150 for junior, 200 for senior, and 250 for project manager. If the projected or the targeted existing salaries are similar to this, this would be enough. It's of course hard to specify the exact amount of the salary, which will be in 5 years, for example. Let's take it a little bit easier. Okay, we'll continue to F3. I will work on answering all these questions, but they're a little bit too long to read through and provide a good answer to now, but it will come. We'll instead get over to F3 and the subcontracting part, which I think is quite interesting for many of you. In this part, you need to, in every row, describe the desired consultant as well as the assignment. It needs to be brief, but quite clear what you want to do or what you want the consultant to do. This category is very broad and can include lots of different things. For example, consulting or expertise, construction works, if they're not connected to specific kind of infrastructure or equipment, help with contracts and procurement, as well as rent of equipment. The contracts should always be awarded based on a fair procurement. For public organizations, national procurement rules apply. And this is very important. And this also means that you can never indicate the name of the consultant that you want in the project already in the application. You should only write what kind of consultant it is, because you will have to procure it anyway. And for private player or for private organizations, contracts up to 130,000 euros could be based on the best value for money procurement procedure. This means that you prepare procurement documentation and you send it to minimum 3 different organizations so that they can prepare their offers, and you choose the best value for money depending on your criteria that you have put up in your procurement documentation. If the contract is on 130,000 euros or more, you need to apply public procurement rules, even if you are private organizations. This is quite strange, but this is how it works in the life project. You can always split up consultant projects usually into smaller pieces also, even if this would require more administration, of course, for each and every of them. This is a question of balance, basically how much staff costs you want to put in, or whether you want to carry out the public procurement and all the administration in that, or if you can somehow standardize your procurements and carry out best value for money procurements only. It says clearly in the application guide that maximum 35% of the budget should be on external expertise or external assistance, but you shouldn't take this rule too strictly, because as long as you clearly motivate that you do not have the competence required in-house, it will be possible to get over those 35%. There is no report that makes it impossible to submit the proposal if you have more than 35% in external assistance costs. So rather than employing competent staff to your own authority just for the project, try to stay focused on what you're good at from the beginning and use consultants. This is a very common approach, and there shouldn't be any problem with it. Some examples, just to show you how broad it is. You will need to write, first of all, it's external assistance, then the organization of a one-day stakeholder conference for consultation from an event management company. You also need to indicate when the costs will appear. With staff costs, this can be hard because they usually indicate throughout the project. In that case, you can check all the boxes where you indicate the time frame of the cost here, and then you of course include the expected cost. If you're not sure about the cost, you make a qualified guess. You can perhaps ask the organization that is arranging events. They're usually more than happy to send you a proposal, or you can search on Google. It usually helps a lot too, and then you can add about 10% to it to make it realistic, or give you some margin for price changes in the future, and that you want to perhaps add some more activities to this contract. You can also put monitoring. The monitoring actions, they need to be organized by someone in the project consortium, but this organization can subcontract, for example, research institutes that can carry out analysis of different substances. Here is one example of that. If we look back at the wastewater treatment plants, we would like to make analysis of the substance X during 3 campaigns. So we'll take 3 different weeks, and we will make 3 samples each week. This is an expensive test, and we will show when these weeks are. It will be Q3 2021, Q1 2022, and Q3 2022. And we expect the total cost of this to be 40,000 euros. This is also the place, if you don't have expertise in EU-funded projects from the past, you can, as we said, subcontract consultant for project management support, for example, helping you to coordinate and write the reports that you will need to write. Then you indicate the number of hours that you think it will take, and usually will cost you around 100 euros per hour, and then you indicate the cost. Also, dissemination activities can be subject to subcontracting. The European Union likes if you do some sort of innovative way of disseminating the information to, for example, citizens. It can be that you develop an app with a game that the children use. This would also qualify as external assistance. And then finally, of course, works that are not connected to infrastructure, prototype, or equipment can be included. So, for example, the rent of an excavator with an operator inside for 120 hours from a local organization can be included. We will go over to the next cost category, F4, which is durable goods, infrastructure, equipment, and prototype. This will require a couple of slides to explain in a thorough way. First of all, there is a difference between infrastructure, equipment, and prototypes. Prototype is the only kind of equipment that is co-financed to 100%, or that 100% of the cost is eligible. Then, of course, only 60% of the 100% will be co-financed by the LIFE program. Infrastructure and equipment costs are only the only eligible cost is the depreciation, and there is of course some room for maneuver on how long you put the depreciation time. For example, how long you can use the item of infrastructure or equipment, but it still limits the opportunities of carrying out grand investment projects and receive full financing from it. First of all, indicate the purchase or leasing costs for the different items that you're looking into. When it comes to this, you should also include the development costs, for example, works. You would think that this needs to fall under F3, subcontracted or external assistance costs, but if for example, a works contract that is carried out by the same excavator driver, then it should be put under, for example, infrastructure. If you use the excavator to prepare the foundation for a new building, that would fall under infrastructure. Then if secondly, very important, in the field, if you go into the F forms field in the e-proposal, you will see that you have to enter both the actual cost of, for example, infrastructure and the eligible depreciation costs. This is to show how much it costs from the beginning, and then how much you will also actually be able to account for in the projects. F4A is infrastructure. This is mainly very tangible stuff, things that are somehow connected to, or that are very like immovable in some way. For example, a building, a foundation, or a fence. It's important to remember that one single item of infrastructure cannot cost more than 500,000 euros. So, for example, you cannot finance a large building, a steel building, for example, that would cost more than 500,000. this will not be eligible, and you cannot even put in the depreciation costs of that. This is simply a way of making sure that too large pieces of infrastructure are not entered into the program, because this is not the idea of it. Projects within life are relatively limited and should not require a steel building that costs more than 500,000 euros. It's only the depreciation costs that are eligible, as I said. And there is another limitation. It is that this can be maximum 25% of the purchase cost of, for example, the building. So in other words, the LIFE program expects that a building, a foundation, has a depreciation time that is longer than 5 or 10 years. It should be 20 or 30 years that we're looking at. And it needs to be in line with your national accountant's rules. And this is, it usually makes much sense. I will show you some examples on the next slide. F4B equipment. Here we look at machinery, measurement equipment, tools, can be computers also, for example. Very broad category. Again, only the depreciation costs are eligible, but here at least maximum 50% of the purchase cost can be covered. And we'll get into an example on the next slide with that too. And finally, what we would like to see more is prototype development. This means infrastructure and equipment that is specifically developed and for the project. It can be something that is delivered ready to test, but the important thing is that it has never been commercialized in the past, and it's not manufactured in any kind of serial production. So you could, of course, use different components that are produced in serial production, as long as the product that you're installing, the prototype, has not in this form been produced before. You need a quite strong motivation, and it's possible that you get the funding for a prototype, but then later on, when you're supposed to get paid for it, IASME or the European Commission will tell you that no, actually it was not. Now when we see it, we realize this is not a prototype. So this is kind of a risky moment, and you should keep that in mind. Especially one thing makes it complicated, and that is that the prototype can never be used for commercial action. And this puts usually some sticks in the wheel, because, for example, if we look back at our wastewater treatment plant, even if we develop the prototype in a separate room, and then the last year of the project, we let some water from the process flow through the prototype to test it. This would mean that the prototype has entered commercial service, even if it's a public organization. And this would mean that it will not be, the purchase cost will not be 100% eligible. Instead, it will be counted as equipment, and maximum 50% of the purchase cost can be covered by the project. Again, also here, contracts are awarded based on fair procurement, the same rules as in category 4.3. We will look into some examples to get a better understanding of depreciation costs versus the share of purchase costs. Just so you understand this, because it's important when you calculate how much co-financing that you can get. So first of all, an example how you write this. A building, for example, you would write infrastructure, and it's a building of 100 square meters, a production hall in steel. It's procured from a steel building producer. The actual purchase cost is 280,000 euro, but eligible cost is only 70,000. And these 70,000 is actually 25% of the actual purchase cost. And how do we show how we get to this conclusion? Well, in the C forms, and this is a part that we'll get to later, there is one section for every action, a section called cost assumptions, or something similar to that. Here you will be able to write that the steel building has an expected depreciation time of 20 years. We will use it for 20 years. The project duration is approximately, or it is 5 years. And this means that for basically during every year, or well, we can put it like this: during the project duration, the building will depreciate well to 25%, which is 70,000 euros. If we take an example to a vehicle, we had some questions on whether it's possible or not to buy a vehicle. This depends very much on the purpose of the vehicle. In any case, it should be electric or at least relatively emission-free, I think, for the evaluators to appreciate such cost post. But equipment vehicle, for example, here we take an electric vehicle with 9 seats. This vehicle will be used to drive workers from the place where they live out to the construction site. This could maybe be motivated. The actual cost of this little vehicle will be 40,000 euros. We'll buy it electric secondhand if we can find one. And the eligible cost will only be 20,000 euros. And again, we look back to the cost assumptions that we have made. And we see that we have expected that electric vehicle depreciation time is 10 years. The project duration is again 5 years. And then you can see that the depreciation during the 5 years of the project duration will be half of the vehicle's original value, 40,000, and end up on 20,000. This is quite straightforward, I think. You should also include works that are connected to equipment in this section. So here, for example, we will take one example, the installation of solar panels. This has also been brought up in the questions. We expect this to take 500 hours. This is a wild guess from my side, and it will be carried out during Q1 2020 by a local sun panel expert, if we can find that. We expect this expert to cost 150 euros an hour, and it's 500 hours. That means 75,000 euros. And we will have to make clear that this is a contract under let's see, 130,000 euros, and therefore it will be enough to make a simple procurement procedure, at least if you are a private company, which I guess that you are. In this case, you don't need to add anything to the C forms and the cost assumptions field. It's enough to write like this in the cost row. Taking one example of a prototype, we jump back to my wastewater treatment project, and we have this hypothetic spectro-ozonation prototype. We will have to write that the equipment is dimensioned for 2.5 million square meters of water per year. It will be installed in Q1 2020, and actually procured from a mechanical engineering factory that will put together this equipment according to our necessities. And we expect this to cost 200,000 euros. And since this is a prototype, it's put together of quite innovative components, but components that are serial produced. The eligible cost will still be 200,000 euros. And we do not need to add anything to cost assumption in this case. But remember that maybe later on this spectro-ozonation prototype, by the time in 2020, this might, surprise, surprise, have become a big innovation already. This is something that already exists, and it will not be on a prototype stage anymore. It will already be a demonstration equipment. In that case, we will only get 50% at most for this equipment. So then we'll only get 100,000 euros as the eligible cost. We'll take one little calculation example for a computer. We also had a question on computers and where to put that. This is equipment. Our project is 3 years long, and we are purchasing a computer that costs 600 euros, and we expect this computer it will be able, you can use it for 4 years before it breaks down or gets too slow. This means that the depreciation, it loses about 150 euros per year. For 3 years, this will mean 450 euros in depreciation. And since depreciation is an eligible cost in the program, we expect that the eligible cost would be 450 euros. But in fact, the eligible cost is only 300 euros because the eligible cost is maximum 50% of the purchase cost. And the purchase cost here was 600 euros. I hope this clarifies a little bit what we want to say. See, time is running away. It actually goes slower than I expected. I think that we'll jump this slide. I've already been on it. And look over to F5 since time is running out and won't have some time to answer questions. Land-related costs. This is only applicable in the subprogram Nature and Biodiversity. I think that it's relevant for some of you. Please read the rules clearly here, but some overall remarks is that short-term lease of land is subject to external assistant costs. So this should not be included in Form F5. You should always estimate the costs excluding taxes and other charges on a per hectare basis. And also, which is important and which might require some time, we have had problems with this in the past, especially during the summer when competent authority members or competent authority employees are on vacation. It's hard to get this paper indicating or confirming the price per hectare is not above the average. So be out on time with this one if you're applying within nature and biodiversity. Then the smaller costs, still important to put them to get the cost in the right place. Costs for consumables. This is smaller things that you use on a regular basis. This would include actual costs for purchase, manufacture, repair, and usage of tools that are not considered durable. Something that you use, throw away. And that is especially not, that is very movable, that is not attached to the ground somehow. This could include laboratory material, it could include information material, repair of infrastructure, for example. It's important to remember that the general fees that you have for your office, your mobile phone, internet fees, electricity, heat, you name it, cannot be indicated. That's part of F8. So we have also had a question regarding fuel. That would definitely be good to include here. The European Commission is not so interested actually in how much fuel you use. They're only interested in the total costs of it. But just in case, I've made an example. Electricity for this electric vehicle recharge. I honestly don't know how much electricity would cost for a vehicle to charge it every day, but an estimation would maybe be that you're driving in 2,000 kilometers from the headquarters to the work site to drive the workers or your staff, and this will be done throughout the 5 years of the project implementation, and we estimate a total cost of 20,000 euros. It's probably much more in reality, but this is as much as you need to write. I think it helps to write either the kilometers or how far and how often you plan to drive the vehicle. Also, laboratory equipment is considered a consumable. It can even be quite expensive equipment. For example, transporters of frozen water samples. Those are quite important. 500 euros per piece. We order 50 of them, and they will end up at 25,000. We indicate 25,000, and all of this cost is eligible, even if laboratory equipment per the name could seem like it is equipment. Other costs, this is basically a trash can when you don't feel that you can put it anywhere else. This would be the place. The most important is, of course, the bank guarantee for private organizations. The fees for that should be included here. You can see I put it other cost guarantee for ensuring financial capacity of small company. Comes in Q3 2018, right after the grant agreement. And in Sweden, I know that costs around 30,000 euros. But it can also be conference fees or insurances that are directly related to the project. If you have any questions on other costs that you think are other costs, please let me know. You're free to write an email, call, or write the question now here in the chat, and I will be able to answer them, hopefully. But there is always room for interpretation here as anywhere else, and it's important to know that you might put certain costs wrong. If it's not too obviously wrong, the evaluator will not even write anything about it in the evaluation paper or the evaluation results. If you do explicit mistakes, then they will whine about it, and it might cost you 1 or 2 points. But not more than that. This is not an aspect that kills your entire project. This is an aspect that might eat 1 or 2 points. Overhead, you can make it very simple or very complicated. The maximum limit of overhead is 7% of all the accumulated costs for your organization in the project. That can be calculated automatically, and I suggest that you do so. It's easier. Well, we are coming back to financial contributions. Cover this very quickly. It's important that every partner has a significant budget, because they translate, the commission translates this into well, commitment, and also co-financers contributions. This is third-party co-financing. So, for example, if you get 60% from the LIFE program in co-financing, you pay 20% from your own budget, and then authority or ministry in Lithuania decides to go in and support the project with 20%. This is a quite common model in Sweden, at least. You will write into the administrative forms that there is a co-financer, write their name, and here you'll add their financing. And some tips and tricks. I'll try to cover this in 2 minutes or so. But one, like in many fields, one big issue in writing a LIFE application, and especially to agree on the budget, is that you're lacking in communication between different actors. It's complex costs. Everyone knows very well what they want to do, but they do not always know what other people want to do. I see that it says they're encountering issues with audio or video. Yes, let me know if you don't hear me. If anyone could write in the chat saying that you hear me, I would be happy. Does anyone hear me? Okay, yeah, someone is writing at least. Astra. Okay, you hear me good. Okay, perfect. Then I'll continue. First time I'm using this app, sorry. Since the project outline is pre-decided, LIFE gives a very clear categorization of the different activities that you need to put in. This is A, B, C, D, E. I'm sure that you're familiar with this if you have looked at the at the project. This makes it very easy to at least agree on the project structure from the beginning, and this helps communication. So I would suggest anyone who is coordinating or preparing an application to create a very simple Excel sheet. This is what we usually do. Something like this. I know that you are not able to see it, but if creating an Excel sheet gives you a very good overview of the costs that you have in the project and what costs other partners have. And this way you will be able to put all the costs together and understand what the total budget is, to see if it's realistic, to see if different partners have well, reasonable budgets compared to each other. And this structure, you can keep it actually very simple, but if you make this structure look very similar to the application forms in eProposal, this will also help you later on to, in a fast and smooth way, copy all these different cost posts into eProposal. And that will certainly save you lots of time compared to having everything written down in different emails and papers. This is a great tool for just putting all the information together. So vertically here, every row is one cost, and it's divided into the different activities, A, B, C, D, and E. So every cost has to represent one specific F form. And as long as they are in the same activity or sub-activity, it's okay to put together, for example, laboratory equipment and electricity, as long as you state clearly in the F form description what it contains and how you calculated it in some cases. In the horizontal manner, you should see that every column is divided into a specific cost category. You'll be able to see here F1, F2, F4 at least, no, F3 is there, F6, and so on. And then it all adds up, including the overhead flat rate of 7%. And you can also see how much you will be able to get in the grant from Life and so on. So something very simple can significantly simplify both the discussion between the partners and later on the procedure when you want to enter all the information into eProposal, if you don't enter it here from the beginning. And one notation, which is, well, that you have to start by filling up the different actions, and after that you can fill out the F forms. And on Thursday we will be speaking more about the C forms, the project actions, and well, you'll have to, after that you will be able to enter the F forms too. So we'll come to the conclusions, or a summary. Basically, it's not really a conclusion. We haven't done much analysis here. First of all, define and describe your environmental problem. Well, actually, you can read those for yourself. You will have access to the presentation afterwards, so you can have a look on what we have been speaking about today. I will try to answer your questions while you are reading. Yeah, it's a bit complicated to do both at once, but I hope that this has been useful, both the introduction and the explanation to the different F forms. I think that it's important to remember that every partner and every proposal is very unique in this context, and also for us that are quite experienced with this, it requires quite much analysis every time. And so you're free to get in touch with me to discuss if you have any specific questions, and you can get my input, at least my judgment of the different costs. Okay, I don't know, how is it also? Now it's 10:59. Will this seminar be automatically closed in a minute, or can we continue a little bit over time? Can we open the chat? You have prolonged. Okay, good. Perfect. Then we can take it a bit easy. Wow, you have entered a lot of questions here. Yeah, perhaps. Well, I can start going through as good as I can, just like this, without any preparations. Let's see. I'll start from behind. Basically, if there are any questions that I cannot answer, I will write them down and I'll try to answer them later. First of all, staff costs. Yeah, that one is answered. Local traveling costs. How local traveling cost per kilometer fuel costs can be reflected in the budget, as decimal numbers are not allowed. Should